What is up, guys? For this video, we're going to be getting the Dakota running again for the first time since January. I've been doing a lot of stuff off of camera, so I'm going to go around and show you guys everything that I have been working on. All of the parts I need to get this thing running are here now. I won't be able to drive it, but I will be able to get it running and let it idle and heat cycle and do all that stuff. Some things that I have done off of camera. First one is intercooler pipe is on, so it's basically the same setup that it was before, but the intercooler is bigger. I'm not running a blow-off valve yet. I do intend to add one eventually, but I'm not going to be running one right away. I really don't need one that badly because of the amount of boost I'm running doesn't really require one. I'm going to be running single digits pretty much the entire time. Plus this is an anti-surge turbo housing, so we should be fine there, at least for now, for a temporary thing. I'm just not going to worry about running one. And then I got a screamer pipe on the wastegate running clear down to the ground. It's actually, I wanted to get it fairly close to the ground. You can see where it stops right there. And then the upper radiator hose is done, so I got 2 elbows. I actually took the stock thermostat housing and welded one to it, and then we've got that. Got a random hose here, the adapter which has the fan switch, because I'm just going to use a fan switch instead of having the Mega Squirt trigger it, because I don't have enough outputs on the Mega Squirt to do that. So we're going to run that fan switch, which now sits really close to the engine, so running the wires will be a lot easier. Another elbow, another one of these steel elbows, and that one is there so that I can get an adapter to go from a 4 to a 3-inch pipe here, like a 45. Stick that here and then put the pod filter somewhere over here. There is coolant in it now. It's filled all the way up. I have a expansion tank reservoir type of deal here, and I realized the other day that I put the fittings on wrong. This thing needs to be at the bottom, so I'm going to have to switch a bunch of stuff around. In order to put this at the bottom, the sight's going to have to go back here, and then that fitting's going to have to move over one. And then for the drain on, I guess it would be the catch can for the coolant, the reservoir, whatever you want to call it, runs behind that fender liner so that if it spits any coolant out of that hose, it goes towards the ground and not leaking onto the tire. So that was a little bit of an afterthought, but it worked out pretty good. So now I don't have coolant getting leaked onto the tire, causing the tire to slip, or causing it to get hurled all over everything in the engine bay, because coolant's nasty. Water's one thing, but antifreeze is another thing. It's all sticky and it stains stuff. So I think that's everything up here except for power wires and wiring harnesses. So the front wiring harness is 100% finished. The fans are wired up to it, so I've got a wire running here which powers those. I don't have it ran to the harness inside, but the front half is all plugged in and ready to go, so I just have to do stuff inside to get those to work. And it's all tied up and everything. I ran it through the fenders. I've got some silicone hose on these areas here to keep the wires from rubbing through. All the lights are here and ready to go. Everything as far as this wiring harness is in its final position, except for the 2 turn signal lights, because I don't have turn signal lenses to put here. I threw the old broken ones away and I haven't ordered new ones, and then these aren't going to be staying on here, but I could plug those in if I wanted to. But see, I ran it through the fender, so it's all safe from debris getting thrown in by the wheels potentially, and it looks a lot nicer having it all hidden. Runs along the firewall there, and then over here wipers are all wired in and working. They will work once the inside of the truck is wired up. I haven't gotten that far yet. And then we've got a battery in here, so I made my own battery tray out of some square tube, some angle iron, and some rod. It's a pretty simple setup. We've got angle iron on the bottom here that the battery rests on, square tube on the sides to hold it together, and then more angle iron running up the back, which is what it's attached to the firewall with. And then the steel rod triangulates everything and keeps it from flexing and stuff. I doubled up the bolts on the top here, so that this is where most of the weight is being suspended by, just to reinforce it, because they're aluminum riv nuts bolted in the firewall. So double bolted it and we're good to go there. This battery weighs approximately, I got water on me or something. This battery weighs about 25 pounds, and I got it sitting fairly close back, so there shouldn't be any issues with weight and things wobbling or anything like that. This battery was the exact size needed. It is a Group 51R-1. A bunch of Hondas use this battery. It's nice and tall and slim and not very wide and anything. It's a very, very good battery. It's got plenty of cranking amps. I can turn the engine over with it, and this battery in particular is very worn out. It was a core return from work. I got it for mock-up purposes and was actually able to get this battery to function good enough to potentially start the truck at least a couple times, so that's pretty cool. But yeah, that is the battery setup here. This is the power cable running to the starter. This is the power cable running to the alternator. I've got them all wrapped up so that they don't rub through anything here. And then this back wire here is the one that runs inside of the cab, which is on this 100 amp breaker switch right here that loops around. Come down here and you can kind of see it going into the firewall right there. So all of that is wired. There's power in the truck if I close that switch up. The fuel cell is completely bolted in. I've got some stuff sitting on top of it, but it is completely bolted in. I got smart this time and spaced it up with some washers on the bottom so I didn't have to cut as big of a hole for the sump on the back, which is right there. I actually cut a nice clean hole this time around instead of screwing it all up, so that's good. We've got this one capped off, and then this is the feed that's going to go to the pump. And then this is the return fitting, which has this 90 adapter to go to a 6AN and then to a 5/16 barb. And I've got a 5/16 barb fitting, bulkhead fitting right here in the bed, so this hose ends right here. It'll make it a lot easier to run the hoses instead of having one continuous hose, and I don't have to worry about hoses getting chafed and cutting through because it's not running through any metal here. And then this is the vent, so it's just a -10 vent hose with a 90 here, and then there is a rollover valve under the bed, a vibrant rollover valve down there, so if the truck tips over, the valve will close up and fuel won't come out. Basically what this truck needs to fire it up is the fuel system run, and all I was waiting for was this fitting right here. And then the other day I swapped the fittings that were on the Walbro to some 6AN, and I only needed to switch one and I changed both. So I'm going to put this barb fitting back on the one side of the pump because this is going to be the pre-pump filter. So this is going to go between the fuel cell and the pump, and then this I've got the 6AN fitting on it so I can screw it straight to the front of the fuel pump, and this is going to be the post-pump filter because you got to have one for the pump to protect the pump. You got to have one after the pump to protect your injectors from the pump if it fails and starts spitting metal into the fuel lines and stuff. So you always got to have two, one before, one after. I have a fuel cell, can't run a fuel sock because the pump isn't in line, so this is the way that I am doing it. This one I'm just going to hang from the inlet hose to the pump. It should be fine. These aren't super heavy or anything. That's how I ran it before and didn't have any issues. And then once these are on, I can run hoses. I'll be able to run the feed line to the pump, the outlet line up to the rail, and then from there I'll be able to run the return line. The fuel system will be done. I'll be able to pour my E85 into it. That was a lot of talking. I apologize for the intro of this video just being a bunch of rambling, but I had to get you guys up to speed on all this stuff because I've been, like I said, I've been doing all of this over the course of the last probably week and a half, 2 weeks, something like that, and just getting as much work done as I can every night, and I think tonight I might be able to fire this thing up. So I'm going to start by getting all of the fuel lines ran, getting the filters and stuff done. That way I'm done messing with stuff under the truck. The only thing that'll be left to do from there to get this thing to fire up will be to wire everything and turn the key, and that's it. Alright, the fuel lines are done. I'll go down here and I'll show you guys what the setup looks like. Got the feed line, which is a soft hose on this portion. There's a P-clamp right there. It's got it mounted up against the frame. Another one here. And it comes down and runs into the pre-filter for the pump, which I've just got kind of hanging here, and then runs into the back of the pump. And of course, got the fitting I ordered, and then the fuel filter here, and then the feed line runs all the way along the frame rail. There's another P-clamp right there. There's another one under the cab floor, which has been there. It's an original one. And then it runs up to the stock fuel rail, into the quick disconnect adapter I've got, and then into the, of course, the stock rail. And the return line comes back down the same direction. It's just mounted up to the feed line, and then it runs up to the bulkhead fitting right there. And then this wire right here is the fuel level sender wire, so hopefully I can get that thing plugged in and working. So it's all the way up at the front of the bulkhead plug up there, but it doesn't have any wires coming out of it yet because I have to pin stuff back into it, but it is at least here, so I don't have to do anything else under here. All the fuel lines are ran. This is where the pump is mounted. I have the two Walbro things with the foam, so it's kind of got some movement, but it's supposed to, so it absorbs vibration and stuff. The ground is here. Power runs through the factory wiring harness right there, and then up to the front, which once again, kind of like the fuel level sender, I have to pin a wire into it to send power back to it. But it is all here. This entire setup down here, the fuel lines, all the wiring, everything is completely finished here. You can see right there is actually where the rear body harness with the taillights and the fuel pump and all that stuff actually comes through the back of the cab now, runs into that little clamp right there. and then runs along the frame instead of running along the frame up there because there's nothing there anymore. I'm going to set it back on the ground, pour fuel in it, and then we're going to come into the cab and start dealing with all this wiring. Okay, it is probably 3 days later, and I've reached a milestone, I guess you could call it. So if I come in here with the key, power's on. Come in here, key in. You guys can hear the fuel pump prime, and that is because the Megasquirt is in and it's got power and ground running to it, and it is functioning. I'm exhausted. It's super hot and muggy out here. There's bugs flying everywhere, but I really want to fire this thing up tonight. So I've got power running to my fans through the factory harness here, which is, you know, this one here. So I've got that power ran to the fans up here. While we're out of focus really bad. That is done. I can actually crank the engine over with the key with the power on, which is really cool. I can demonstrate that real quick. This battery that's in here is not very good because I got it just for mock-up purposes, but pull it into neutral. So we can spin the engine over with the key from the inside. I do have some lights. I've got you can see I've got corner lights come on, and then I have headlights, and I do have high beams as well. Turn signals don't work because the relay's not in, and I don't have bulbs in the rear turn signals. Brake light still doesn't work. The auto rest for the wipers also doesn't work because I haven't wired that up yet. I have the wires coming out of the harness for that though, so I don't have to do anything in the engine bay for them. And where I've been spending most of my time the last few days has been under the dashboard running power wires to everything. So we'll come down here. It's going to be a little bit dark, but you should be able to see. I've got a light down here this time. But we'll come down here, and everything's kind of a mess right now, but you can see I've got wires ran all over the place. So all the relays are 100% wired up, with the exception, wow, it got, my head's blocking the light. There we go. Let me stand back a little bit. So all the relays are wired up with the exception of the signal for the fans, which has to come from the engine bay from the temperature switch. But I've got the fuel pump relay completely done, ground off the ECU, switch power coming from the ignition, and the power actually comes from that one fuse box down. Let me get my finger in here, right there. That's where the power supply comes for each relay, and then there's going to be a power supply for my radio, and let's see, that's fan relay. That is the engine relay, and then there's two other 40 amp fuses which are for the factory fuse box, which I also have power running to, which is why I'm able to crank the engine over and turn the lights on and stuff. And then that last one's going to be for the radio. There's nothing in there yet. And then this fuse box up here, which has power running to it because that's what the power supply for the Megasquirt is coming off of, that is the one that runs off the 40 amp relay for the engine, so that's going to be the engine stuff running off of that box there. You can see we got the Mallory box up in that corner. There's the Megasquirt. The Megasquirt wiring harness runs along the bottom here and then out through that hole right there. This is where I've been spending most of my time. This is extremely tedious work. It takes forever to get this kind of stuff done, but I'm very near being done. So the Megasquirt harness is out in the engine bay. All I have to do is finish wiring up the Megasquirt stuff, and then I have to run power to the temperature switch. I have to run power to the injectors from in here. I have to run power to the ignition coil, which will come off of the Mallory Hi-Fire, and I have to run the trigger as well off of the Hi-Fire to go to the coil. And then I need to run power for the or switch power for the alternator regulator. That's it. That's all we need to fire this thing up. I will not have an oxygen sensor yet. I ordered a bung. It hasn't even been shipped yet. It's been a week and a half now. I'm kind of frustrated with it. I might either cut my old bung off my old exhaust and just make something work there if I get really desperate tomorrow and run out of stuff to do, or I might just go to O'Reilly and buy one of theirs. But I don't like the O'Reilly ones because they're just a nut. They're a six-sided nut, and they look really ugly, and they don't weld on very nice because they aren't curved with a pipe. But I may just do that. I don't really know. But I won't have that. I won't have a tack. Well, I will on the computer, but the only sensor, I've got an oil pressure sensor just laying in there, just hooked up so that I don't have a giant oil leak, and so I can monitor the oil pressure. And I have been able to get it to read a little bit of pressure, cranking it over by hand. I did prime everything a couple days ago. I think I told you guys about that. Made a giant mess of oil everywhere because I forgot that that port was open. So Yeah, I wanted to get you guys up to speed on that real quick because hopefully the next clip we'll be cranking this thing over and trying to start it. So I know I said I was going to finish this thing, but I've been working on this for another 3 hours and I can barely keep my eyes open. I'm getting dizzy. I keep thinking I'm seeing things out of the corner of my eyes. I'm basically losing my mind. So I got everything on the engine wired except for the IAC valve, and I've got to wire up the switch for the fans. I got to wire up the regulator here. I have to get power from the Mallory to the ignition coil, then I have to run power to the injectors, and that is really all that's left to get the first crank and fire up out of the way. But I've got to drill a new hole in the firewall for some of those power wires and for the vacuum line for the Megasquirt to go through. I've got to put a grommet in there. I've got to go in there and run all that stuff, and I'm just exhausted. I have nothing else in me to push through. It's like 2 in the morning right now. I've been up since 5. I've had it. So I'm gonna get some rest, and tomorrow we're gonna come out here, get this wiring finished, get it to where I can run it and heat cycle it, get the fans to do their thing and all that stuff. Do that, get it to cycle and do all that stuff, and then I'll button up all the wiring after I know that everything works. And then next video maybe we'll get some exhaust work done. I don't know. I'm rambling. I'm losing my mind. I'll get back with you guys tomorrow. We'll get this thing finished and we will get that first start taken care of. Alright guys, everything is wired up. I actually had this thing running earlier. Not gonna keep that a secret from you. Went to record the first start and the battery in the camera was dead because one of my charge ports on my little strip cord thing up here doesn't work, and it's the one the camera was in. So the camera was dead and I couldn't resist starting it for the first time. No issues, no leaks of any kind. It's kind of funny. When I was trying to start it, I left the cover on the turbocharger, and I was like, man, why doesn't this thing want to start? And I had my friend Nate was here, and he said it was like sucking these couplers closed and everything, and pulled that off, and it pretty much fired right up. No fuel leaks, no oil leaks, no coolant leaks, nothing. Everything is good. I got the TPMS recalibrated. I had to change up the warm-up cycle for the IAC valve and tweak some things. So they changed the throttle body, so I had to move that stuff around, and I had to change the throttle enrichment. I actually had to turn it off. So the V8 throttle body was definitely causing my lean out issue when giving it throttle, because with throttle enrichment completely turned off, I have no issues anymore with the throttle response. I'll be able to get it tuned in perfectly. So go ahead and fire it up. Now the battery might be dead. I had it sitting on this battery tender here earlier because I wanted to hopefully be able to crank it. It was actually able to start the truck on its own earlier. So I got the laptop on right here. And grab the, what did I do with the key? That's a good question. Come in here, you can see there's power to the USB. The laptop is on. Let's see if we get fuel pump primed. And we're connected here, so we'll go ahead and fire this thing up. Or we'll have to plug a battery into it and jump it because that battery's not any good. Okay, let's do this real fast. Got a battery here. Ugh. God, that thing's heavy. The old battery, actually, the one that used to be in the bed. I got some jumper cables. I'm going to put you guys down, hook up some jumper cables, and then we'll go fire this thing up. Alright, I got the jumper cables on over there. Let's try this again. See if we can get her to crank. There we go. We're on. Not near as loud as I expected it to be. Turbo is spinning. Like I said, no leaks whatsoever. No fuel, no oil, no coolant, nothing. Earlier I got the fans to cycle on and off just like they're supposed to. All the sensors are reading correctly on the Megasquirt. So we got intake temp here. That is my voltage, which is a little bit high right now, probably because it's trying to charge that battery up. We got coolant temp here. That one I don't really need anymore. That's the lost sync counter. That's for cranking and stuff. Air fuel is not working because I don't have that working. Throttle position, I might need to recalibrate that just a tiny bit. Idle, of course, we can read. Ignition advance, we got all that stuff going. So everything is reading perfectly fine. We are all good. My wiring job is good. So let's go outside and let this thing run for a little bit quieter out here. So basically, I've got to clean up all the wiring under the hood and then come inside of the truck and finish wiring brake lights. The windshield wipers need to have a way to turn, like have them auto rest. They work, but they don't rest automatically. Need to do that. I need to run power wires for some of the gauges and stuff. I need to get gauges mounted in it so I can actually monitor stuff without having to have the laptop on. So I got some stuff to do inside the cab, but the engine is done other than just cleaning up all the wires on it. Everything else up there is finished. So I think I'm gonna end the video here. This video is kind of a cluster. I apologize for that. I was working really hard trying to get this thing done as quickly as I can because I just wanted to hear it running. It's sitting in there purring away. My head gaskets seem to be working perfectly fine after doing the head bolts. They haven't popped or anything, and I got it nice and warm earlier. So that was a success. The new turbo seems to be doing its thing just fine. Made a little bit of boost pressure earlier, just free revving it, but it's a bigger turbo. It doesn't spool up sitting there free revving like the old one did, which is a good thing. But everything's working. We're back. The Dakota's running again. I can move it. Like I said, first gear synchronizer seems to be an issue, so I'm gonna have to rebuild one of these two transmissions, which is annoying, but that's just the way it's gonna go. But I'll be able to live with the first gear synchro being worn out for now, just to have the thing drivable. Yeah, that's it. So that's gonna be the end of the video, guys. I want to thank you all very much for watching and coming along with me on this journey. We're definitely not done, but we have reached kind of the final portion of, you know, getting everything finished up. So man, what do we have left? I gotta clean up the rest of the wiring, finish the rest of the wiring inside the truck so I can get some things working again, and just dial in the interior, dial in the wiring in the engine bay. I need to get a bumper for it. I'm gonna make a hood dump exit exhaust temporarily just so I can get the wideband sensor on it, but eventually we'll be putting a bumper dump exhaust so that it'll be a little bit more drivable and less irritating going down the road. That's really it. That's all that's left. Bumper and a proper hood bumper exit exhaust, finish up the rest of the stuff on the interior, and that is it. Everything else is there. And a couple gauges. I won't have a tachometer for a while because I haven't ordered one yet, and I need to get a fuel level gauge because I actually have that wired up, and there's wires in the engine bay that should work for that. So we're close. This thing's almost done. This is going to be the most dialed in this truck has ever been. I'm going to push really hard tonight and tomorrow to get the rest of the wiring dialed in so that I can actually take that thing out on the road, which will include getting the exhaust done as well. And yeah, that's it. So that's going to be it for this video. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you all later.